spine. Now, if you who don't know me, my name is Swati. I'm an executive mom's power coach. So basically, I help moms who are executives overcome the physical challenges of motherhood. Now, this could range from a weak pelvic floor to spinal pain to a tennis elbow or a carpal tunnel syndrome or probably a poor posture. So, going back to our topic for today, is your pain originating in your hip or your lumbar spine? So if you did not watch the last time, that was about 2 days ago, and if you're watching this in the future, you can go back to the video. It is called, what was it called? The first symptoms of the first signs of hip problem. So what are the first signs of hip problem? If you watch that video, you can go onto my YouTube channel, and obviously if you like what you see, you can like and subscribe to it, and you'll be notified of my videos that come out in the future. All right, so now you have some pain coming into your hip joint, and you want to know, is it actually coming from your hip joint or is it coming from the lumbar spine? Because then your management is different. So before we go ahead, let's talk a little bit about referred pain. Now, sometimes what happens is you say, I've okay, for the last 3 days, I have had this pain on the side of finger here, going right into the tip of the finger. Now, I know that I don't suffer from any arthritic pains. I don't have any issues in my hands, but I do know I'm getting a bit of a stiff neck, especially on my right-hand side. So I did a bit of poking, realized that the pain was actually coming from the nerves that are originating from my neck, going and supplying into my hand. So this is a typical example of referred pain. This is an example of nerve pain, but you can also call it referred pain. Pain is in my neck, but the indentation or the symptoms are seen in my hand. Okay, so similarly, you can have pain in your bottom, your glutes, your gluteal muscles. There is something going on in your lumbar spine, or it could be because there's something going on in your hip joint. Now, hip joint, when I say hip joint, let me just clarify, because people usually confuse the glutes for the hips, right? They use these terms are used synonymously. When we talk about hip, we're talking about, the long thigh bone. It's got a round head here. This is your long thigh bone, and it comes and attaches into a light structure here in your pelvis. So that is hip joint. So basically, on the side seams of your trousers, right? The top end of the side seams of your trouser. So your hip joint is about there. So what happens is in conditions like sciatica, where your sciatic nerve, that is one of the biggest nerves in our body that originates in your lumbar spine, that can be a problem in your lumbar spine. However, the nerve compression or irritation will actually manifest as pain in your bottom, down the leg into your hamstrings, and all the way down to your toes. So this is a typical example of a lumbar problem that is manifesting lower down. Usually, problems that originate in the lumbar spine will follow this pattern. Most of the people, now there's no blanket rule because obviously we are very different, every human being is different, but most of the times the pain that originates in your lumbar spine and it refers down will be more towards the back side of the body. That is the glutes, your bottom or your buttocks, and your hamstrings, and maybe lower down, depending on what the problem is. However, if you have a hip problem, a joint problem, for example, say arthritis, then what will happen is most of the times, not always, but most of the times, your problem will be more in the front of the thigh, probably in the groin, possibly on the side of the thigh as well. Now, when I say side of the thigh, I'm thinking more of conditions where your IT band, that is a strip of fascia, that is thickened muscle, a thickened structure over the muscle, that runs from your hip joint to the side of your knee joint. So in people who have problems with their IT bands, they can also have, the problem is originating from the hip joint, so they can also have the problem on the side of the thigh. So remember, hip joint is more front of the thigh, the groin, and the lumbar spine issue are glutes and hamstrings, so like back of your thigh. There can be an overlap. For example, if you have symptoms only in your bottom, you probably will need a little more guidance from your doctor to know whether it's coming from your hip. If it's only in the bottom, not going down to your hamstrings, then you want the doctor to tell you whether it's coming from your lumbar spine or your hip joint. But most of the time, it will be lumbar spine. Now, the hip and spine are very codependent, your lumbar spine and your hip joint. So it's very difficult to differentiate between the conditions that are originating in both. And usually they will have this is like a general overview that I gave you. Our bodies are so complex, right? They never function in isolation. I know we have doctors for like ENT and bones and heart. That's complex. One person can't possibly know everything about the body. So that's why we have specialists. But then there's something called a multidisciplinary team when it comes to a person being treated by the doctors, where the doctors are interacting so that they know that, whether the problem is coming from your bones or your, like heart or lungs or whatever. Anyway, that was a tangent I went off onto just to tell you how complex the body is. But yeah, I'm just looking at my notes here. So I have them here. So yes, that is all I wanted to talk to you. So I hope it's more clear to you now if your pain is originating in your hip joint or your lumbar spine. If you want to learn more about this topic of hip pain and spinal issues, you can join my free community. I will leave a link in the description for those of you who are watching me on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. You'll see the link in the description below or the comments below. And for those of you who are watching me on Instagram, you can go to my community and you can join from there. Alrighty, guys. I hope that was useful for you.